אוקיי. טוב, אז שלום חברים, איזה כיף לראות את כולכם. אני רוצה לפתוח רק בכמה מילים, להגיד שהייתה לנו שנה מטורפת איתכם היום, אז תודה לכל מי שהגיע לשאר המיטאפים שלנו לאורך השנה, ומי זה פעם ראשונה שלו, אז ברוכים הבאים, כיף שהגעתם אלינו. אנחנו Web3 Devs Underground, אנחנו קהילת Web 3, אני אתן לשאולי להציג אותנו כבר עם קצת יותר מידע עוד כמה דקות, אבל תודה לכולכם שהגעתם. שמחים להרוויח אתכם איתנו היום, ואנחנו נתחיל ממש עוד דקה. שאולי, אתה רוצה להצטרף אליי?
טוב, ערב טוב לכולם, איזה כיף שבאתם. אנחנו באמת, כמו שעמית אמר, סוגרים שנת 2025, שנה שלא הייתה קלה לאף אחד, בטח כל מי שנשאר פה בארץ, וברשותכם אני גם אעבור עכשיו לחלק הזה לאנגלית, יש לנו קצת אורחים פה מחול. So I'm welcoming everybody to join us, and thank you very much for coming. We're closing the year of 2025 today, so this is like kind of like recap of everything that we've been going through in the last year, which wasn't an easy year for entrepreneurship, for tech, and for everyone who is living in Israel. So let's just recap about the Web3 devs community. We started it, Roy and me, about almost 4 years ago, when Roy noticed that it's pretty lonely to be an entrepreneur in the space. And when you're looking for places or information and knowledge that is non-biased, that does not have any, that is not being promoted by any single entity, although we're talking about decentralization and open source, it's really hard to find. So we decided to start a community about that. Today, Web3 Devs Underground is over 1,400 developers. We started this year. Also, we launched a new website, a LinkedIn page, an X account, and we're now live streaming on YouTube, on LinkedIn, X, and StreamYard. During the year, we had 10 physical meetups. So as you know, it was hard, but the team members here, Amit, Alon, Eden, Alon, worked really hard and managed to achieve it. We also have done, how many online? 14 online events, which is pretty significant. We reached to 166,000 views, which is pretty incredible. So kudos to guys for, yeah, almost zero marketing, zero budget, fully open source community. So kudos for you guys for working hard. And kudos for the audience here to support us and coming to our events, and to the today's speakers. We're also saying a lot about thank you about the people who worked hard for that. So we will, of course, would want to say a few words about the sponsors who supported us during the whole year, which is basically almost every operating company in the space in Israel. So we want to help. Really want to thank you all for letting us open your heart and your budget through us. In addition to the 40 plus speakers who came from different places in Israel and around the world to support and to contribute from their knowledge. And yeah, so I'll recap with that and say, and hand the microphone to Gornitzky, who's hosting this meetup today. And let's start.
Hi everyone, my name is Aviv and I'm leading the blockchain practice here at Gornitzky. I was instructed to speak in Hebrew, so switching to Hebrew, but happy to have you all here, and please feel free to reach out after the panel. אז שלום לכולם, ברוכים הבאים, אנחנו שמחים מאוד לארח אתכם כבר בפעם השנייה, אנחנו מאוד אוהבים את הקהילה ואנחנו שמחים לפגוש אתכם שוב וגם לראות פרצופים חדשים שלא ראינו במיטאפ הקודם. אז אני אביטל, אני מובילה את פרקטיקת הבלוקצ'יין כאן בגורניצקי. גורניצקי הוא אחד ממשרדי עורכי הדין הגדולים והמובילים בישראל. המשרד קיים עוד מלפני קום המדינה. פרקטיקת הבלוקצ'יין שלנו מטבע הדברים קצת יותר צעירה, אבל גם היא צעירה ובועטת, וגם לנו הייתה שנה מטורפת בשנת 2025, וממש רק לפני כמה שבועות סגרנו את אחת מהעסקאות הכי גדולות במשק. אנחנו היינו עורכי הדין הישראלים של פקסוס, וזה מצטרף לסדרה של עסקאות ענק שהשוק הישראלי ראה בשנה האחרונה, העסקאות של ג'נרסיס שאנחנו עשינו, המחירה של INX, שגם הם לקוח ותיק של הפירמה, ועוד לא מעט דוגמאות, אבל לא נעלה אתכם. אנחנו עוסקים בכל תחומי הבלוקצ'יין שאפשר לחשוב עליהם, אנחנו מלווים יזמים החל מהיום הראשון שלהם, כשהם באים עם רעיונות עם מוצרים, ואפילו חברים מהקהילה הזאת שעוד אין להם רעיון, אבל הם אוהבים את העולם הזה וחושבים על הצעד הבא, ועד למשקיעים וקרנות ועסקאות ענק, כמו שהזכרתי קודם. אז אני אסכם ואגיד שאנחנו מאוד מאוד שמחים לארח אתכם, אנחנו מאמינים בתעשייה הזאת ובקהילה הזאת, ואנחנו שמחים ומרגישים שכחלק מהתרומה שלנו לשוק, זה לא רק שיח משפטי וחפירות על רגולציה, לא יהיו כאן כאלה, על חשש. אנחנו כאן כדי לתת לכם את הבמה וכדי באמת לדבר על הנושאים שמעניינים אתכם. אם אתם רוצים לדבר איתנו, אז אני ועוד כמה נציגים של הפירמה נסתובב כאן לאורך הערב, תרגישו חופשי להתחבר בלינקדין או לפנות דרך החברים הנהדרים של הקהילה, עמית, עדן, אלון ואלון ושאולי כמובן, ותוכלו, תתכבדו ושתהיה כמעט סוף שנה שמחה, ובתקווה שנתראה פה גם בשנה הבאה. תודה רבה.
תודה רבה. אז עכשיו, אני יודע שאנחנו בדרך כלל עושים תוכן שהוא מאוד קריפטו-נייטיב, והרבה מכם גם יודעים את זה, אבל היום החלטנו להפתיע אתכם עם משהו מיוחד. המרצה הראשון שלנו להיום הולך לדבר על תחום שהוא יותר מתחבר היום מאוד מאוד חזק לעולמות ה-Web 3, שזה עולם הפינטק. אז אני מתכבד להזמין לבמה את ארקדי, ה-CTO של רפיד, ו-co-founder, לעשות לנו את ההרצאה הראשונה, ואחריה גם אנחנו נמשיך ל-Q&A קצר ביחד איתכם, תרגישו מה זה חופשי להשתתף, זה חלק מהכיף, וארקדי, תודה רבה לך שבאת היום.
I'll start in English, but I'll switch to that. So, okay. So I strongly apologize for people who speak in Hebrew, but in English, excuse me, that I will take this lecture in Hebrew. So I am going to switch now to Hebrew, and maybe you just to catch some words in English during my presentation. Okay. אז הקהילה פה, איך שאני מבין את זה, זה קהילה של יותר שקשורה לאופן סורס, שזה מאוד 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 רחוק מהעולמות של הביזנס, מאיפה שאני מגיע למעשה. אז קצת עליי, אני CTO של חברה של רפיד, אנחנו נמצאים פה בישראל, רפיד זה Global Payment Company, שלמעשה היא שולטת מעל 100 מדינות בשוק, פריסה בכל העולם כמעט, והעיקר שאנחנו עושים זה acquiring, disbursing, כל מה שקשור לכרטיסי אשראי או לבנקים. מי שמכיר אותנו, השלט נמצא לעזריאלי, אז אפשר לראות את זה. מה שאני כן רוצה לדבר איתכם היום, זה חלק מכם כבר בטח נמצאים בחברות סטארט-אפ, או שהולכים להקים חברת סטארט-אפ, או שכבר עשו חברת סטארט-אפ, או שכבר מכרו חברת סטארט-אפ. אז בסופו של דבר, כחברה שצמחה משני אנשים ל-1,600 כמעט, שאנחנו נמצאים כרגע, זה המספר של אנשים שנמצאים בחברה, אז תוך כדי עשינו 1,001 טעויות, ועם טעויות האלו אני רוצה לדבר עליהן בסופו של דבר איתכם, שחלק מכם שילכו מאופן סורס לעולם של ביזנס, או שכבר נמצאים שם, אז אולי אפשר להימנע מטעויות האלו. וחלק מהם בטוח שניתן להימנע מהם, וחלק מהם אתם תעשו בעצמכם. כל מה שאני הולך להגיד זה חווינו על בשרנו, אבל זה לא מה שנקרא תורה מסיני. כל אחד יעשה את זה וזה בסדר, אבל אפשר עוד פעם בחלק מהמקרים להימנע מזה. דרך אגב, אני העברתי את ההרצאה הזאת גם באינטליגנייט, מי שאולי פעם היה, כן, כאילו בפגישות האלו, לא הייתם? טוב, בסדר. דרך אגב, אתם יכולים להרים יד ופשוט לקטוע אותי ולשאול את השאלות, בסדר? תוך כדי. אז למעשה ברגע שסטארט-אפ קם, יש מלא שאלות מה אנחנו הולכים לעשות, מה לעשות קודם, לגייס אחרי זה, איזה סוג אנשים לגייס, מי יבוא קודם, יבוא QA, יבוא מפתחים, יבוא CTO, יבוא VP R&D, מתי, איך, ובסופו של דבר כל השלבים האלו הם מאוד 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 חשובים והם די גורליים בכל ככה צעד שלכם וגם בכל, לאורך כל החיים של החברה. אז אם אנחנו מדברים על ארכיטקצ'ר, אז early architecture decision זה מאוד חשוב וזה כמו כדור השלג המתגלגל. ברגע שאנחנו מארגנים חברה, ובהתחלה יושבים רק שני אנשים, לצורך העניין אני לוקח את זה כדוגמה, שני פאונדרים ומתחילים, טוב בסדר אנחנו נעשה את זה ככה. ואחרי זה ההחלטות האלו מתגלגלות קדימה וקדימה ויכולים גם להביא בסופו של דבר או לקריסה או להצלחת החברה. אם בזמן לא לעשות את השיפטינג, לא לעשות את הפיבוט, מה שאנחנו אוהבים לעשות, כן? אז למעשה החברה יכולה או להצליח או לקרוס. ולפעמים זה פשוט לא מספיק כסף, שזה גם יכול לקרות. יכול להיות שזה החלטה טכנולוגית לא נכונה, והחלטה ארכיטקטונית לא נכונה. אז זה אחד מהדברים שכן מאוד מאוד חשוב לשים לב, ברגע שאתם נכנסים לעולם הביזנס, מגייסים כסף, לעשות את שיעורי בית בצורה הכי טובה וככה הכי מפורטת שאפשר. לפעמים זה כן ניתן, לפעמים זה לא אי אפשר. דבר שני זה פרודקט ו-R&D misalignment. זה דבר שהוא מאוד מאוד חשוב. בסופו של דבר יושבים שני אנשים, אחד מגיע מעולם הביזנס, אחד מעולם הטק, ומי שעולם בטק הוא רוצה לקדם את הטכנולוגיה. מי שמגיע מעולם הפרודקט, הוא רוצה לקדם את הפרודקט ויש לו את הוויז'ן משלו. שני עולמות האלו לפעמים לא נפגשים, אין מה לעשות. הוא רוצה מהר והיום, והוא רוצה כמה שיותר טוב, ואני אחשוב ואני אעשה מחקר, ולאט לאט, ושני עולמות האלו בסופו של דבר יכולים להביא לפיצוץ. שזה אנחנו פחות רוצים. אז בדרך כלל כשהסטארט-אפ קם, בדרך כלל, עוד פעם, זה לא תמיד, בסופו של דבר יש שני אנשים שאחד מגיע בעולם הפרודקטי ואחד מעולם הטק, ושניהם צריכים להסתדר איכשהו, וצריך לשים לב על זה. דבר שני, זה, אני קורא לזה features without measurable impact. אני מניח שרוב האנשים פה מגיעים מעולם הטק, זה נכון? כן, פחות או יותר. אז גם אני מגיע מאותו עולם, אני מהנדס בסופו של דבר, אז אנחנו אוהבים להכניס כמה שיותר פיצ'רים מעניינים, אנחנו חושבים בסופו של דבר שזה כן יעניין ללקוחות, לאו דווקא, יכול להיות שרק פיצ'ר אחד, וזה מה שמעניין. אנחנו כן רוצים להכניס טכנולוגיה, אנחנו כן רוצים לקדם את זה, אבל בסופו של דבר, אולי רק דבר אחד צריך. רק אחד. ופה יש גם סכנות מאוד ברורות, במיוחד לסטארט-אפים ב-early stage. ו-R&D וכל המפתחים, מה אנחנו אוהבים לעשות? אנחנו אוהבים לעבוד שאף אחד לא יפריע לנו. שאנחנו שמים את עצמנו באיזו פינה, אל תפריעו, יהיה בסדר, אנחנו בסופו של דבר נביא מה שאנחנו חושבים לעשות. נכון, סליחה, אנחנו נביא מה שאנחנו חושבים לנכון, אז זה לא נכון. כל המנגנון הזה של חברת סטארט-אפ, חברה בהתחלה, היא צריכה לעבוד כמו מכונה משומנת, ביחד. וזה גם אחד מהמתכונים לכישלון במידה וזה לא עובד. מאוד חשוב שליד אנשי טק יהיה אנשי פרודקט, שיגדירו את המטרה, שיגידו לאן אנחנו הולכים ואיך אנחנו נממש את זה. הטק זה enabler בסופו של דבר. R&D, אנשי R&D הם מגדירים את איך זה ייראה, איך זה ימומש, ובסופו של דבר, מה ה-trade-offs של הדברים. אז זה הייעוד שלהם, במקרה בריצה הזאת. ומאוד חשוב שה-roadmap, גם של אנשי פרודקט וגם של אנשי R&D, יהיה roadmap משותף. ולא שהוא עושה מה שהוא חושב, והוא חושב והשני חושב שהוא עושה מה שהוא חושב. ותכלס זה לא יוצא. אחד מהדברים שאנחנו עשינו, אנחנו בהתחלה אמרנו שאנחנו נלך לעולם של מונוליט. בהתחלה ברפיד אנחנו אמרנו שאנחנו נלך לעולם של מונוליט. זאת הייתה החלטה. האם החלטה הייתה נכונה או לא נכונה, זה כבר הזמן ישפוט. עם הזמן החלטנו לזוז למיקרו-סרוויסיס. ראיתי המון חברות ויעצתי להמון חברות שמגיעים חבר'ה, גייסו כסף, מתחילים לרוץ ואומרים, טוב, אנחנו נעשה את המיקרו-סרוויסיס, הכל מיקרו-סרוויסיס. ופתאום הם מוצאים את עצמם עם 600 מיקרו-סרוויסים, שאי אפשר לשלוט על זה, בשום פנים ואופן, אי אפשר לתחזק את זה, ומה שהם רוצים הם פשוט ריצה אחרי הזנב. זה בלתי אפשרי. אז זאת ההחלטות נגיד שכן צריכים להתקבל ב-early stage, ומאוד חשוב לקבל החלטות הנכונות. אל תלכו ל-600 מיקרו-סרוויסים, בלתי... כי אחרי זה מגיעים אנשים וצריך להסביר להם מה המוצר עושה ואיך הוא עובד. ואנשים התקשו למעשה להבין את זה. אל תבנו מוצרים מאוד מסובכים. איך שאומרים, היופי הוא בפשטות. אז כאנשי טק, אנחנו לפעמים נוטים לסבך את הדברים בבנייה, ובסופו של דבר חברה צריכה לרוץ קדימה, וכמה שדברים יהיו יותר מסובכים, יהיה לכם קשה לתחזק את זה. זה גם אחד מהדברים שאנחנו חווינו תוך כדי בנייה, ובסופו של דבר פישטנו את הדברים, וזה בסופו של דבר יניב את הפירות. ודבר אחד מהחשובים, וכן ראיתי כמה וכמה סטארט-אפים שמסיימים את האורך החיים שלהם, למעשה כאילו מקצרים את האורך החיים שלהם, הם מכניסים המון טכנולוגיה. שלמעשה יש 10 מפתחים, וכל אחד מביא את הטכנולוגיה השונה. אז פתאום אתה מוצא שיש לך את גם Python, גם C#, גם C++, גם Node.js וכו' וכו', ובסופו של דבר כל אחד כתב את המיקרו-סרוויס בשפה שלו, ואף אחד לא יכול לתחזק את הסרוויס של מישהו אחר. זה אחד מהדוגמאות. אז, ובאמת ראיתי כמה וכמה חברות שהן נסגרו אך ורק בגלל טכנולוגיה. שטכנולוגיה נבחרה לא נכון, וגם ניהלו את זה בצורה לא נכונה. כפי שכבר ציינתי, החלטות כמו מונוליט, כמו מיקרו-סרוויסים, זאת החלטות שצריכים להתקבל, וגם צריך לדעת לעשות פיבוט בזמן הנכון. אחרת, אתם תגיעו לבעיה, תגיעו לאיזשהו צומת החלטות, שיהיה לכם מאוד מאוד קשה לעשות rewriting של כל הדברים. עוד פעם, אני רוצה רק להדגיש שכל הדברים מה שאני אומר, אנחנו חווינו, עשינו את הטעויות, ורק אני מספר לכם את זה פה. הנה אני עומד פה, אני אומר לכם, כן חווינו, ואם אתם תבנו משהו, תנסו להימנע מזה. בהתחלה, בתחילת הדרך, החברה צריכה להיות אופטימייסט לשינויים. כי מתישהו אתם תעשו אותם, החברה תעשה אותם, את השינויים הללו. אם בניתם תשתית שלא ניתן לשינוי, יהיה מאוד 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 קשה אחרי זה גם לתחזק את זה, וגם בזמן ש-CEO שלכם יבוא מאיזושהי פגישה ותגיד, תקשיבו חבר'ה, עכשיו אנחנו משנים את הכיוון. אז תגיד, לא, אנחנו צריכים לעשות פה שנה של שכתוב. אז לא, מראש תבנו דברים שניתנים לשינוי, או שגם הם אופטימייסט לשינוי, שאתם תוכלו לעשות את זה בזמן סביר. דברים כמו מתי להכניס QA, האם אנחנו רוצים QA, האם אנחנו רוצים בכלל, אנחנו אומרים, האם אנחנו רוצים בכלל לעבוד QA, האם נדרש QA. דרך אגב, יש פה אנשים שאין לך, כאילו מי שעובד בחברה, אין לכם QA בכלל? יש גישה כזאת שבכלל אומרים שלא נדרש QA, המפתחים יעשו את הסייקל מההתחלה עד הסוף, שזה בסדר גמור, אבל ב-early stage זה דבר שיכול להיות מאוד מאוד גורלי, כי בסופו של דבר ב-early stage המפתחים רצים מהר מאוד, אין להם זמן, אז רמת הבדיקות תהיה מאוד מאוד נמוכה, בדרך כלל, אני לא אומר תמיד, בדרך כלל. אז פה יש את הסוגיה הזאת, האם כן להכניס QA, יכול להיות שצריך להכניס QA בהתחלה לפחות, ואחרי זה להעביר את זה לכיוון, כאילו להתפטר מ-QA ולמעשה להעביר את לכיוון של מפתחים, וזה אחד מהדברים גם מאוד 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 חשובים. אז כפי שאתם רואים פה, do we need QA? זאת השאלה $1,000,000. AI זה דווקא פחות נגע בנו בהתחלה, כי אנחנו התחלנו את החברה לפני ש-AI פרץ לתודעתנו, אבל כרגע הרבה מאוד חברות מבססות את גם ב-early stage, ואני רואה את זה כל יום, כשחבר'ה מגיעים לייעוץ, הם אומרים שאנחנו לא נגייס מפתחים, אנחנו נבסס את רוב הפיתוח ב-AI. להגיד לכם אמת, הסתכלתי AI, אנחנו משתמשים ב-AI בחברה, הרבה מאוד, למטרות מאוד מאוד מסוימות, ועדיין הכלים הללו לא יכולים להחליף את המפתח, זה מבט שלי, עוד פעם, ואני אומר את זה, זה דעה שלי אישית. ובמיוחד ב-early stage. ברגע שב-early stage חברה מניחה את התשתיות ומתחילה לרוץ קדימה וצריכה את האינפרסטרקצ'ר הנכון, להשתמש אך ורק ב-AI ולהחליף את המפתחים, להחליף את המוח האנושי, בעיניי זה קצת שייקי, כן? לא הייתי הולך לזה. בטוח אפשר לעשות חלק מהמודולים עם AI. אתם משתמשים פה כן, יש שימוש, אוקיי, בסדר גמור, יופי, כל הכבוד. אז למעשה אפשר להשתמש ב-AI, חד משמעי. שאלה איפה, האם זה קשור לביזנס או לא קשור לביזנס, ואם זה קור או לא קור. אבל ההחלטות הן שלכם, כן? כאילו ההחלטות זה בסופו של דבר של אנשים שמארגנים את החברה, שהם נמצאים בקור של החברה. תשימו לב שב-AI עדיין יש בעיות של security, יש בעיות של performance validation, ותמיד יש דבר כזה שנקרא hidden technical debt, שלמעשה אומרים, טוב בסדר, אנחנו נעשה פה עכשיו את התשתית, נעשה משהו, זה עובד, בסדר, ל-POC זה בסדר, אז נרוץ קדימה ואחרי זה אנחנו נממש את זה. אתם צוברים debt. אתם צוברים debt שאחרי זה אתם צריכים לשלם. ו-AI לא ישלם את זה, אתם תשלמו את זה. אז גם צריך לשים לב על זה. ודבר כזה שנקרא AI in every corner, כאילו אנחנו אוהבים להגזים בדברים, וואלה, טכנולוגיה חדשה, אנחנו נעשה את זה בכל דבר. בכל דבר זה לא ילך, ובסוף אתם תקבלו משהו שהוא מקולקל. אז צריך לדעת את זה, להשתמש את זה בצורה מדודה ונכונה. אז כמו שאמרתי, effective AI usage. אפשר ללכת לפרוטוטייפ, אפשר ללכת לטסט ג'נריישן, אפשר לעשות refactoring ודוקומנטיישן בהתחלה, ואני מדבר על חברות early stage. בחברות mature זה משהו אחר לגמרי. יש כבר כסף, אתם גייסתם כבר ראונד A, B, C, יש לכם יותר כסף, יש לכם יותר זמן, יותר אנשים, ואתם כן יכולים להרשות לעצמכם להכניס AI למקומות שעוד לא הייתם שם. אבל בהתחלה צריך לדעת להיזהר. Cloud Infrastructure, מאוד חשוב. אנשים מגיעים אליי סטארט-אפים שהם מתחילים, ובקלאוד אתם כולם משתמשים בקלאוד, אני בטוח בזה, כאילו בצורה הזאת או אחרת כולם משתמשים בזה, אז מאוד קל ללחוץ כפתור ובום יש לך את הסרוויס, מאוד קל ללחוץ כפתור ובום יש לך שרת, ושרת גדול, כן, כאילו, מה אנשים שוכחים? כסף. העולם של קלאוד זה עולם תלת-ממדי, או לא דו-ממדי. מה אנחנו קונים בקלאוד? אנחנו קונים בקלאוד פאוור, זמן ומאני. אנחנו לא קונים מאני, אנחנו משלמים מאני. אז קלאוד זה עולם תלת-ממד, הוא לא דו-ממד. ואנשים שוכחים את זה. מאוד קל ללחוץ כפתור, ואז סטארט-אפים מוצאים את עצמם, ממש לפני כמה חודשים היה סטארט-אפ שעשיתי לו due diligence, אחד מה-VCs ביקש ממני לעשות לו due diligence, ופתאום גיליתי שהחשבונית שלהם זה $2 מיליון בחודש. אז אני אגלה לכם סוד, Rapyd, יש לנו תשתית אחד מהגדולות בארץ, אני לא אומר בעולם, אבל בארץ, אנחנו באמזון, יש לנו אחד מהתשתיות הגדולות שלהם, אנחנו משלמים פחות. אז איך זה יכול להיות? אז הפניתי את תשומת ליבם של VC, אמרתי חבר'ה, יש פה בעיה, כן? כאילו, יש פה כבר בעיה. ובאמת התגלתה שם בעיה, ובסוף עשינו ריפקטורינג, ועזרתי להם, וחשבונית הגיעה $50,000, וזה מה שצריך לעלות, לא מעבר לזה, ובסוף זה אחד מהבעיות שיכולים להיות ב-early stage, כי לכולם יש הרשאות, וכל אחד יכול לעשות מה שהוא רוצה, וכמובן אפשר להסביר את זה למנכ"ל, כן, כאילו, אין לנו פה סקיוריטי, כן, אנחנו צריכים לרוץ מהר, אני אלחץ ויהיה בסדר. אז Cloud cost grows faster than revenue, שזה אחד מהבעיות קלאסיות בחברות early stage, קלאסיות. איך להימנע מזה? מאוד פשוט, לשים cost attribution מראש, לשים, למעשה לגדל את התרבות בתוך החברה אצל אנשים, לשים cost attribution לכל סרוויס או לכל פריט שהם מתחילים איתו בקלאוד, אוקיי? ודבר אחרון שאני רוצה לדבר על קלאוד, בדרך כלל מגיע פרודקט ואומר, חבר'ה, אנחנו חייבים להיות מולטי קלאוד. מולטי קלאוד, זאת אומרת שאני רוצה גם ב-GCP, גם באז'ור וגם באמזון. אנשי טק צריכים לעמוד על הרגליים האחוריות ולהגיד, זה בלתי אפשרי, זה בלתי אפשרי. אנחנו לא אוהבים להיות tighted couplet, מה שנקרא, אנחנו אוהבים להיות lucid couplet. לא רוצה להיות תלוי באף אחד, רוצה להיות חופשי, כי אנחנו בני חורין בסופו של דבר, כן? אני רוצה לזוז מאמזון ל-GCP ומ-GCP לאז'ור ווייס ורזה. אז ב-early stage אתם צריכים להבין שזה בלתי אפשרי. פשוט להגיד, אוקיי, זה בלתי אפשרי. אז כמו שאמרתי, single cloud provider, managed service first and auto scaling and shutdown policies. שלמעשה, גם אחד מהסטארט-אפים מגיע, אמר, תקשיב שנייה, איך אנחנו יכולים לעשות אופטימייזינג? אמרתי, אתם עובדים שישי שבת? לא. למה שאתם לא תעשו את השאט-דאון לכל סביבות ה-QA שלכם? לא, זה הרבה עבודה. לא, זה לא הרבה עבודה. זה רק סקריפט וזה קצת עבודה בהתחלה, ואחרי זה חיסכון של המון כסף. זה אחד מהדברים שאנחנו גם לא שמים לב, כרגע אתם יושבים פה, ויכול להיות שהשרתים שלכם עובדים, נכון? אבל יכול להיות שיש חלק משרתים שלכם, הם משרתים בכלל QA. אז למה שהם עובדים עכשיו? אתם פה. זה כסף. זה נכון, אתם אומרים, זה $, אבל 50 שרתים זה $50, 1,000 שרתים זה $1,000. ואחרי זה אתם מבינים. אחד מהבעיות זה ownership בחברות קטנות. זה צריך לקחת ownership ומי לוקח ownership, וזה גם מאוד מאוד חשוב. אני לא אתקע פה כי אני כבר רוצה לרוץ קדימה. אחד מהדברים ש-VP R&D או CTO זה להימנע מחובות עתידיים. זאת אומרת שלא להגיד, טוב בסדר, אנחנו נבנה עכשיו משהו קטן ואחרי זה אנחנו נשלים את זה. לא. אז זה גם אחד מהדברים שמאוד מאוד מאוד חשוב ב-early stage company, שזה מראש ייבנה כמו שצריך ולא יהיו יותר מדי technical debt. אני חושב שאני ככה ניסיתי לגעת כמעט בכל דבר שאנחנו חווינו, וגם ראיתי אצל סטארט-אפים אחרים. אז יש שאלות?
תודה רבה על השיחה. אז אולי קצת אוף טופיק לשיחה עצמה, אבל אנחנו פה במיטאפ של Web3, נכון, של קריפטו, ואני יודע שלכם יש לכם איזשהו מוצר שמתעסק עם סטייבל קוין,
נכון.
ותהיתי אם, קודם כל, האם זה מוצר שאתם מפתחים אותו אין-האוס, או שזה איזשהו white label עם חברה כמו פקסוס או משהו כזה, או שזה, ואם זה כן משהו שאתם מפתחים אין-האוס, אז מאוד מעניין אותי לשמוע קצת יותר על זה, ומה אתם עושים שם, ואם יש לכם עוד איזשהם תוכניות, או שזה משהו שאתם לא כל כך מתעסקים בו.
אנחנו כן מתעסקים עם סטייבל קוין, זה נכון. אנחנו אמנם, סך הכל בעולם יש ליד 10 סטייבל קוינס, משהו כזה, לא יותר מזה. כמובן אנחנו לא מתעסקים עם כל סטייבל קוינס בעולם, אנחנו מתעסקים רק עם בין 2 ל3 סטייבל קוינס. המוצר הוא מוצר אין-האוס, רפיד עובדת רק אין-האוס, פונים אליי לפעמים המון אנשים עם אאוטסורסינג ועם כל מיני הצעות, אז אני דוחה אותם על סף. רפיד לא מכניסה טכנולוגיות, היא רק מוציאה טכנולוגיות ומייצרת טכנולוגיות. אז המוצר הוא אין-האוס, הוא מבוסס על מנועים שלנו, הוא כן משתמש דרך אגב בקצת AI, קצת, ממש טיפה. זהו.
אתם עוקבים אחרי נניח דברים פה, יש עכשיו רשתות חדשות שמתמקדות בסטייבל קוינס, כמו למשל ארק של סירקל, זה גם משהו שאתם מסתכלים עליו או שלא כל כך?
לא. הרפיד מסתכלת על סטייבל קוין שהבנקים עובדים איתם, זו חברה רגולייטית לגמרי, חברה למטרות הרווח, אנחנו לא עושים מחקרים, אנחנו רק מרוויחים כסף בסופו של דבר, לטובה או לרע. אז אם נסתכל על אופן סורס ועולמות היותר טכנולוגיים, אז לא מאשרים לעצמנו ללכת לשם, אין מחקר, יש כסף. אז כל מה שאנחנו עובדים עם כמה בנקים גדולים בסופו של דבר, אלו הבנקים הגדולים הללו עובדים עם הסטייבל קוינס מסוימים, שם אנחנו נמצאים. יבוא הזמן, יבוא בנק אחר, יהיה סטייבל קוין אחר, אנחנו נכניס אותו.
אמרת שהחברות באות אליך לייעוץ. אשמח לבוא לייעוץ אצל כל פעם שיש רפיד.
תבוא. איך זה עובד? אני בלינקדאין, ופשוט כאילו שלח לי הודעה, ואני לא מבטיח שאני עונה באותה שנייה, אבל אני עונה.
מה דעתך על סרברלס?
ראיתי לא מעט, השאלה היא כזאת, מה הדעה שלי לגבי סרברלס? אז הדעה שלי היא חלוקה מאוד, אוקיי? היא לא חד משמעית. קודם כל אי אפשר להגיד שום דבר על כלום, אי אפשר להגיד לא, כן? כאילו קודם כל צריך להגיד אוקיי, זה טוב, אוקיי? אני עדיין מנהל את כל ארכיטקצ'ר טים ודאב-אופס טים ברפיד, ואז אני אומר, חבר'ה, אנחנו enablers, אנחנו אסור להגיד לא, קודם כל אנחנו אומרים כן, ואחרי זה אנחנו מתחילים לשאול שאלות, למה? אז אני אשאל אותך, כאילו, כמו יהודי טוב, למה?
הרבה מהבעיות שציינת פה, אתה פשוט לא נתקל בהן, אתה לא צריך להרים שרתים, להוריד שרתים, אתה...
אני אענה על שאלה...
רמת אבסטרקציה אחרת.
אני אענה לכם על השאלה הזאת בצורה מאוד פשוטה. יש לנו סרוויס שנקרא Reconciliation, זה אחד מהסרוויסים הכי חשובים. למעשה, עם הסרוויס הזה הוא עושה התחשבנות בין בנק או לחברות אשראי לרפיד. זאת אומרת שכל צנט שעובר דרכנו, ועובר דרכנו $100 מיליארד בחודש, אז למעשה אנחנו סופרים ומתחשבנים עם החברות שונות ועם כל מיני חברות, לא רק עם חברות אשראי. וזה הכסף בסופו של דבר. בהתחלה אנחנו בנינו את ה-Reconciliation Serverless, מבוסס אורורה, מי שמכיר, זה היה MySQL, אורורה, ובסופו של דבר שמנו את זה ב-Redshift, כן, כאילו קלאסיקה אין כמוה, עולה כמו כנף של המטוס, אפילו יגיד לך יותר מכליה. אז הפתרון עבד, שלמנו על זה המון כסף, והבנו שאם אנחנו נעשה את זה לפחות חלק, אי אפשר, אני לא הולך לכתוב אורורה, אני לא הולך לכתוב את MySQL, אבל אם אני אתקין MySQL על שרתים שאני מנהל, ולא על RDS, אלא אני לא אשתמש באוטומציה, כאילו האמת ששכחתי את הסרוויס הזה שמעביר בין MySQL ל-Redshift, יש שם את האוטומציה שמעבירה את זה, אני אעשה את זה לבד, על שרתים שלי, הקוסט שלי הוא פשוט, במקום $100 הוא הופך $1. אז בהתחלה שאתה נמצא בבן אדם אחד אני בעד, כן, כאילו ש-early stage, חברה בן אדם אחד אני בעד, צריך לדעת לראות את הנקודה הנכונה מתי לרדת מזה. הייתי באמזון, הייתי במטה של אמזון, והראינו להם שאנחנו הגענו לסף יכולת של RDS. מישהו משתמש ב-RDS דרך אגב? אתם יודעים מה זה? או שאני סתם זורק את זה? רגע, אתם לא מכירים את אמזון? אז אני פה זרקתי כמה וכמה buzzwords, חבר'ה, סליחה, טעות שלי, חשבתי שיש פה פמיליאריטי עם אמזון. אז RDS זה סרוויס של אמזון, שהוא נותן את הסרוויס לדאטאבייסים. אתה לא צריך לדעת כלום, אתה עושה new MySQL, new Aurora, new SQL Server, Postgres, הכל, כן? כאילו זה serverless טוטלי. אז למעשה אנחנו בהתחלה, ה-MySQL שלנו, כל הדאטאבייס הראשי שלנו זה MySQL. ה-MySQL שלנו היה ב-RDS, ב-serverless, המון שנים. הגענו לסף היכולת של ה-serverless, אנחנו הגענו למיצוי שלו. ואמזון עצמם הייתי במטה שלהם, ישבתי שם עם ארכיטקטים של RDS, של הסרוויס הזה, והם אמרו, אתם צריכים לרדת מזה. כי ה-cost optimization, אתם כרגע הולכים לשלם לנו על ברזלים כל כך המון כסף, שזה בלתי אפשרי, אתם צריכים לרדת מזה. זה פחות או יותר מה שאני יכול להגיד לך. כן, אני מדבר על לג'ר הפנימי שלנו, כן. על reconciliation זה לג'ר פנימי, כן. טוב, אז אני מודה לכם על ההקשבה. אני מקווה מאוד שהנושא הזה היה קרוב ללבכם, אבל אולי זה יהיה קרוב ללבכם. אני קצת ירחתי, נכון?
לא. טוב, תודה רבה, ארכדי.
תודה.
טוב, אנחנו לא נעשה עכשיו הפסקה, חשבנו בהתחלה שכן, אבל החלטנו שלא. ופשוט ישר נתחיל את הפאנל. אז סטיבן, אדם, תום, בואו תצטרפו אליי. עדן, אתה יכול לחיית אותם אם שצריך רמקולים וכאלה. לשנות את זה.
טוב.
תודה. אוקיי, מה צריך להביא? עוד אחד.
כן.
מאיפה הם מביאים?
זה בעיקרון צריך לעבור...
זה לכולם? אוקיי.
אני אשמור?
הבנתי. אני יכול, לא אכפת לי לשב באמצע. כן, מה שאתה רוצה. ישמעו? אם אני אשב באמצע ישמעו? לא, אבל הוא צריך את זה לוידאו.
כן. אנחנו מעבירים את שניהם נראה לי ביחד.
זה של ההגברה כאן, זה לא מחובר לוידאו.
לא.
זה developers.
So,
Yeah, we have one for you.
לא יודע, אז למה הוא הביא
This
לי
is
את זה?
only for the recording, so no worries. It's not for the audience here.
Sounds good.
Hello.
Hey, how are you? Long
Good,
time.
good. How are you? Good to see you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
guys in the front, if you want to join us, that's the time now. Please take your seat.
Yes, yes. Just pick up the yard. We'll be here at the dinner, I think, right? From this
If not, just outside, so we will not be bothered. Hi guys.
Hello, hello.
Good to see you. It's great to see you.
Good to be here.
Let's start rock and roll. So I don't feel like we need to introduce you guys. Thank you very much for joining. Let's start with a quick question. I'm going to read them from the laptop because I want to stay green enough to look pretty. Give your experience, and it's taking a voice, Arkady? 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 Just noticed that you're missing. With that? Let's do that. You know what, let's start with the quick round of intros. Tom.
Yeah. So my name is Teman. I'm with the Ethereum Foundation, with the account abstraction team, and recently also the Ethereum interop layer protocol. If anybody heard about that. Yeah, that's it.
Hey all, I'm Levi. I'm a co-founder of Back Finance. We are doing tokenized equities, provisionless, fully regulated. We just got acquired by Kraken.
Hey everyone, it's great to be here. I'm Steven. I'm co-founder and CEO of Offchain Labs. We do a few things. Most notably, we build Arbitrum, the Ethereum layer 2. We also build Prism, which is the leading consensus client for Ethereum. And we recently acquired a company called ZeroDev, in which we build smart accounts and smart wallets.
Well, I already been presented, so I'm not going to present myself again. So Arkady, CTO of Rapyd.
Awesome. So with that, Arkady, you just finished something like best practices for the CTO, technical co-founder. So I want to take that back and continue with that because all of you actually have a pretty decent technology background. So some of you don't know, but Steven here is a professor of cryptography before.
Ph.D. Not
PhD. So yeah, pretty deep tech experience, and also he's humble, but he helped some of the Israeli unicorns in the very early days in their MPC. And Tom here played a role in both sides as CEO and a CTO through wallet companies. One of them was acquired. If anyone remember Portis from one of the first bull runs in 2017. So let's start with that. So as your experience, what is the most common mistake that the CTO co-founder can make?
That's a question. I think, as a CTO, I think like being maybe in the early stages, trying to, in Hebrew we say, it's like trying to build everything out as if tomorrow you're going to be a 1,000 people company.
Yeah.
Right now you need to focus on delivering an MVP and iterating, just move fast. Don't worry about if it's not going to be perfect. The market will be more forgiving if there are mistakes, and it will be if you don't deliver in the next 6 months something that's meaningful, and especially your investors might be a little less forgiving. So don't try to, make it super scalable for everything. First, get it off the ground.
No, I don't. So yeah, I want to echo Tom, and of course, Arkady, like the lecture was like really amazing on that front. I think, I've been a CTO back in Nasdaq, and now I've been more, let's say, CEO kind of role. And in the end, you need to understand that tech is not what matters. Product is what matters. And as much as I like tech, we have to be very, very much focused in product and in the clients. And especially in crypto, because crypto comes from tech, and we're all techies, and we like it a lot. I think back in the days 2017, we saw so many people building so much tech in crypto that actually no one needed, and no one ever used. So in the end, you build there needs to be a product, a clear product with clear usability and clear users that are willing to either pay for it or you have some other monetization. And the tech needs to do the bare minimum in order to serve this product. Anything above that is a waste of time and money, because as I don't have to tell you this, but you will pivot so many times and things will change so many times. So you have to deliver as fast as possible and get some feedback from the market if what you're building is actually matters, because 99% of the time it doesn't.
Early on, I remember back in maybe 2018 or so, a friend of mine who's in the Chinese message where I spoke Chinese language and told me, they're calling you the professor coin there, and they meant that in a bad way, I think, but I actually liked it. But the idea is actually, so I'll say similar to what Adam said, but maybe a slightly different spin, which is tech itself won't actually get you to succeed, but I wouldn't say the tech's not important, particularly if you're building a system like Arbitrum where you have tens of billions of dollars on the line. Like, the tech is very, very important too, because you need to obviously make sure that's secure. And security to me is I'd rather fail but be secure than have a great product and go down the line of like some of the other companies that have lost a lot of funds. So I think it's 100% technology, but also 100% ecosystem, product, and all of that as well. And that, I think, is something which, at least for me early on, I remember coming out of Princeton, and it's interesting, actually, the academic blockchain community is quite different than the sort of Ethereum community. And I remember coming out of Princeton, we thought we were hot stuff, and we was 2018, we went to this conference in San Francisco called CESC, and we announced that we're building Arbitrum as a company, and we just expected everyone to care, but nobody actually cared. And the idea is you actually have to take the technology and deliver it to users, and then ultimately change people's lives, make the world a better place. And it's the combination of all those things coming together that will actually make you succeed.
So from my side, I think we already, I spoke about it this 30 minutes, so I'm not going to go back to same things, but I think that the main sins of the CTO, it's arrogance, recklessness, and vanity. These are three sins which sometimes make the CTO very problematic to the company and just stop company go forward faster. So it's only from my side. So we call it in Hebrew, call it a yehirut. And sometimes we don't know everything. And sometimes we need just to go to our team and talk to team and make decision based on a team knowledge, not only myself. Okay, and sometimes I see CTOs which does do a lot of very remarkable decisions only based by his own experience. So this is my 2 cents.
So let's continue with that. Steven, the next. You mentioned something that was pretty exciting. So if you're going to the academic community, and when they call crypto, it's totally different from what we know as crypto. And not always for the bad, or like only for the good. So let's talk about that. So like your decision on like focusing on Ethereum and basically extracting most of the value from Ethereum the last 2 years. Where is Arbitrum going?
We say Arbitrum everywhere, and what we mean by that is it's actually, again, I focus on the real world use cases and who we're supporting, what we're building. So today Arbitrum is the #1 layer 2 by value on the chain and a lot of other core metrics. But actually, if you look at things like stablecoin adoption, RWA adoption, it's not just the top layer 2 on Ethereum, it's also just the top blockchain. Like Arbitrum has about $9 billion of stables on the platform, which makes it just a top 5 like blockchain, top 1 layer 2, but top 5 blockchain. So Arbitrum has a very strong public, credibly neutral layer. But we also, on the other hand, have what's called Arbitrum Orbit, which is the ability to use the technology to build your own chain. And there are over 100 chains that are building today on the Arbitrum stack, including crypto native names like Yuga Labs, including some of the biggest institutions in the world, like Robinhood, for example, has announced their chain. Also, focusing on tokenized equities, they currently have over 1,000 equities that they've tokenized on Arbitrum One, and they'll be expanding that into their own Arbitrum chain as well. So that's on the one hand, where we're focusing. But if you zoom out and say, what are the areas that I think are critical and most important, and where will Arbitrum succeed? So a couple of years ago, I might have said DeFi, and then a couple of years later, I might have said RWA. But I think if you zoom out, there's actually one word that really encompasses this all. I've met a lot of people and asked them what you do, and they say I work in finance. I met people that say they work in decentralized finance. I've never met someone that told me they work in centralized finance, right? That's the term that doesn't really exist. And I think the idea is, and also real world assets. Those are what we call assets. Right? I think the idea is that there is a convergence happening on chain, and we see two things happening. We see the crypto native assets being packaged up for traditional developers, the DAT craze of this past year, ETFs before that. We see traditional assets being packaged up and tokenized on chain. Some of the biggest institutions in the world, BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, others are all tokenizing assets on Arbitrum and other blockchains as well. And that word is just finance. I think we are just becoming a critical part of the financial landscape, whether that's through tokenized equities like Adam's working on, like Robinhood's working on, and really all the integrations that we're seeing today. And that's what I believe is going to be in the future. When I started working in the blockchain space a long time ago now, well over a decade, it wasn't like all these new crazes that would catch on. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but some of them are quite cool. Like I never imagined like NFTs, for example. Who could have imagined that? What I did imagine was, hey, we have a system today that's working for some people. If you're in the United States or here in Israel, you can get a bank account, you can have modern infrastructure to pay your bills and transact. But actually, if you're in some other countries, you just actually can't get hold of stable currency. And we're just changing that. Or you can't get access to US investments, for example. Mm-hmm. And I think that those are the use cases that motivate me originally. And those are the use cases that I actually see really, really taking off in the past year. So I think we are literally opening access, permissionless access, lowering the bar both for developers and retail users alike to participate, and just building a better financial system.
That's awesome. And it is true, because if you're going to chat and see what's happening in Arbitrum, the hub for DeFi, which is kind of like leading me to talk to you. What's going on with Ethereum? You guys not really moving, there's million of Teman, let's move, wait, what's going on in Ethereum?
So, when you talk to people from either the foundation or anyone who has an opinion on Ethereum, I feel like when it comes to how L2s are, I'm of the mindset that I'm in favor of how Ethereum scales to L2s, because I'm not a maximalist in that sense, where I think, we are, L2s do make compromises on, things that are decentralized because sequencers are not exactly like mempools or whatever, but these are compromises that I feel like make sense. In the sense that L2s, I see them as and not just me, this is a known kind of way of looking at it, that L2s are the execution layer and Ethereum are the consensus layer, right? You kind of you can have that really high bandwidth on L2s to do things, but you constantly kind of write it to Ethereum because, that's iron, right? That's what's there, that there's no all kinds of shenanigans that can happen. And I see that as a very viable way to, scale Ethereum. So yes, the assets themselves sit on the L2s, but I don't think that it would be this way if you didn't have Ethereum underneath as this consensus layer that, it kind of provides this trust infrastructure that everybody can use. Another challenge that we have with Ethereum right now is how do we allow users to move those assets between the different L2s? That ties into what we just recently released, which is EIL, the Ethereum interop layer, which is a way to, people know intents. Intents exist. You have a way to use intents. Intents, the trust assumptions that we see as problematic with that is you're asking someone else to execute on your behalf. As opposed to when you're using EOAs, you just, you do everything, right? You're in control. So with EIL, we built a system using vouchers. I won't go into that, but basically it allows you to have we bring the control back to the account. So you execute everything, but you still get that like Ethereum experience like Ethereum used to be back in, I don't know, 2017, before L2s and everything, where it was simple, super expensive, but simple. So we're trying to bring that back in the sense that you just sign one transaction and you can do multiple action across multiple chains. You can easily like move, we always give an example like Alice on Arbitrum and Bob on Base, and we just want to, the ABCs work here, and you want to be able to move things very easily between chains, and it's for the user experience, it's very simple, and when it comes to the trust assumptions, it's still in the hands of the user. So I think what Ethereum has done in 2025 and moving forward to 2026 is really focus on scaling. We saw this with Fusaka also, which is about like allowing the L2s to scale as they want easily without requiring hard forks, so you can change like the block sizes and everything. And we're going to see more things moving forward, like EPBS, and focusing on like MEV flows and how you can make sure that things scale in a way which, on the one hand, we still have this great performance that can really onboard the financial system, because I feel like that's what it's all about. I'm sorry, when I got into Ethereum, that's what excited me. I think like consumer products are really interesting, and we're going to see some amazing things that are going to be like paradigm shifting in a sense in how things work. And you can say that maybe prediction markets are you're starting to see some stuff there, but still this is not something that's completely new. You had prediction markets before that, but I feel like the big thing with blockchain is when you create the new financial rails, right? That's where the trillions of dollars are. That's the big boy money, so to speak, right? So we need to make sure that we keep things trustless, because that's what Ethereum has got going for it. This credible neutrality, the idea that it has to remain trustless in the sense that there's no intermediaries where we don't need it. Otherwise, we just become like a slower Solana for that matter. So it's all about making it faster, but still trustless.
That's awesome. Another one more minute. I just want to continue with John.
Yeah, I got it.
Because we're wrapping here 2025 and looking forward for 2024 and 2026. Where is the innovation coming to Ethereum? What are the opportunities that you're saying here to the entrepreneurs who thinking of like what should they pursue, why they should live? What are the opportunities in Ethereum for 2026?
Again, I'm a little biased because this is the project I'm working on, but I'm talking from what I see most closely, which is about interoperability. I feel like interoperability is going to really kick off. Because right now, anybody who's trying to build anything that requires their users to move across chains, that's very difficult. That's like you either compromise by using intents, and then you're kind of like locked into a specific provider, like a cross or whatever, and then that could be a problem, especially if you care about stuff like that from an ideological perspective, but there's other considerations. But on the other hand, so once we have solutions that are allowing that to happen in a more easy way and UX friendly way, so if you're building applications that require users to move assets across chain via DeFi, or even it could be something like gaming, because you want to have NFTs and easily move them across different ecosystems for different reasons. I can think of a few, but this will now be more possible in 2026 moving forward. So I would kind of like look into those technologies and see how you can adopt them in your use cases.
Okay, so yeah, you put me between Ethereum and Arbitrum, and that's difficult. Also between friends, but I'm gonna play devil's advocate with your permission.
You should, because I saw you in the Solana conference.
Oh yeah, of course. But yeah, not representing Solana here. I actually think that the L2's kind of world and the multi-chain that we're living in is, for me, like a mistake. Like it's mostly kind of a Vitalik mistake on the roadmap of EVM. I think that the UX of the users deteriorated a lot, and the UX or the experience of the developers, they actually built something deteriorated a lot. You need to like work on multiple chains and deploy everywhere, and the fragmented liquidity, and what Tom is building is amazing, and with respect to solving that, but in a way, we already threw that stone into the whale, and now we're trying to get it out. What Steven built in Arbitrum is remarkable. I think that probably the most kind of one of the smartest teams in the world with crypto. But in the end, I think it's a product issue. It's not a tech issue. If Vitalik could have kept everything under the Ethereum umbrella and created some kind of an Ethereum L2 originally, I think we would all be living in a much better kind of world in a way, and I think we would have much bigger scalability. And I think you see that also that EVM became very fragmented, and it like Solana had a major chance to kind of take over or take a lot of the innovation because of that.
Isn't that called Cosmos?
Again, you want to go back. So I have many kind of. There were many solutions. Again, I don't think the issue is a tech issue. The question is not are you using this tech or that tech. The question is do we have, let's say, the thought leaders like Vitalik that are actually decision makers in the space, like pushing to something that thinks about how this will be for the users and for the developers, versus just it's kind of I think having this layer 2s is kind of an easy tech solution. Okay, we'll build the consensus layer, and then everyone can do their own thing, which sometimes works, right? Vitalik made it the same way with the kind of general programmatic kind of blockchain. That's what Ethereum is. But I think the L2s in a way takes it too far. So
I just want to give a small response to Stephen, and then I think you should take it from here. From the way I see it, it's actually from a product perspective, it kind of allows this flexibility where you have, because it's always about this kind of like blanket that's getting pulled in like you're pulling one thing and that place is uncovered. And it allows the market, which I think is better than just having some people in the core devs saying, okay, this is the only L2 that makes sense. This is how we do it, and that's it. Because different organizations, different products have different needs. And if you do it well, and I agree about the stone in the water and dragging it out right now, and we're trying to get EIL to have more adoption because we think that's a great solution to this problem, and having that experience again. This is like our main headline, having the 2017 Ethereum experience, but with the scalability and everything around that. But I do feel it's like this is actually a product thing about having that flexibility. But I'll let Stephen.
Yeah, a few thoughts. Number one is there's no question that it's easier and it's simpler if you have everything on a unified layer and a single chain. Of course, that's going to be the better experience. But the analogy that I have is I'm sure, a lot of us here build companies, and, I built a company from myself and my two co-founders. Today we're 160 people, and there's been a lot of evolution along the way. And that requires at certain points a certain restructuring as well, right? You can continue on and do things exactly as you were doing it, and that's much easier. And then at some point you take this nosedive in productivity for a short amount of time and say, we're actually going to change the way we're doing things and restructure how we do things. And that gives you a short-term setback, but it actually unlocks much, much, much greater ability to scale long-term. I view that as where Ethereum is, and as compared to Solana. Solana, I would say, took the easy route out, which is crank up the capacity, keep going, and never have to deal with these issues. So you kind of just keep growing the same way you were running things when you were a 3-person company to a 100-person company, but you'll never get to a 1,000-person company. What Ethereum did is took a step back and said, okay, here, we're actually going to fracture ourselves, and we're going to need really smart people like Tom to actually help us put the pieces back together. And we're working on that as well with Zero Dev and other efforts as well. But the end result is going to be something that's actually capable of handling the world's transaction volume, which is not something that a single network like Solana can say. We saw what happened when President Trump launched a meme coin on the network. The network just basically grinded to a halt. And that's not something that we can, have if we're supporting Visa and, the full magnitude of the world's transactions on chain. But the second point I'll say is, that's my sort of high level why I think it's not a good technological argument. But actually, my second point is, let's say, I think it's also just a mistake of what the L2 vision is today and how it's evolved. And what I mean by that is in 2017 or 2021, when it was initially articulated, we, and myself included, were really thinking about scaling, right? So we were thinking about scaling. How do we get to a place where we can scale? And at that point, the idea that Adam said of a single enshrined L2 could have made sense. But that's actually not the way that the use or the product, if you will, has actually evolved. If you look at what's happening today, particularly among institutions, and institutions have been the largest adopter and the largest catalyst of new users coming on chain in the past year, institutions aren't choosing anymore between Ethereum and Solana, because for many institutions, their first premise is we want to have our own customizable chain. We want to actually have an environment which we control. Nothing to do with scaling. Even if Ethereum can handle their scale, even if Solana can handle their scale, it has to do with a different word, which is customizability. I want an environment where I can have custom KYC, where I can have custom privacy, where I can have custom permissions of who can launch contracts, who can transact, priority lanes for certain types of transactions get included faster. And you can disagree or agree, but what they want is flexibility and customizability. And we're seeing this across the board. We're seeing this with Robinhood, who's building an L2 and Arbitrum together with 100 plus others who are doing this as well. We're seeing this with Circle. We're seeing this with Stripe and Tempo. They've decided to build their own layer ones. But the false dichotomy between Ethereum and Solana, it's not about scale anymore. It's about actually wanting to control your own dominion and customize your own environment. And if you look at it through that lens, which is not what we were thinking about originally, admittedly, when we built this, these institutions have two choices. They can launch their own layer one, in which case they actually have to deal with the basic things like consensus and getting committees and actually the cost of capital, because if you want to do it right and actually have validators, these cost often 10 figures, right? Literally hundreds of millions of dollars just to pay for a secure network over the year, irrespective of how secure the network is. Or you can launch a layer two like Arbitrum, where your fees are margin-based fees, just margin on transactions. Arbitrum has about 96% margins, which means for every transaction, its cost of security is about 4% to Ethereum. And when you look at it through that lens, Ethereum has a superpower in which it can take its core consensus and it can actually extend that to any institutional chain. They can be part of Ethereum through building on Arbitrum. And that's something that's actually like completely remarkable, and Solana has zero answer to. If you get into a room with Solana developers and say, should I launch my own chain? The answer will be no. If you get into a room with me or other Ethereum, should I launch my own chain? Well, maybe. Maybe you want to launch an Ethereum, maybe you want to launch an Arbitrum, maybe you want to launch your own chain. And the nice thing is the Ethereum ecosystem can support all of these. But again, we're not losing them to Solana, we're losing them to their own layer ones, and that's something which Ethereum has via its roll-up centric roadmap, which literally Solana just doesn't have an answer to.
I definitely make clear that I yield to Steven and that he's much smarter than I am on these Twitters, but yeah.
No, it's...
Well, that's awesome. I really appreciate the discussion, and also I'm pretty sure the people here appreciating it, and that's why we are gathering this. So kudos, thank you for that. I want to take that to the point when you mentioned, and also you, Adam, and it's actually the next question is to Arkady. We started talking about in 2025, Donald Trump administration took place, and ever since we're hearing a lot about institutional adoption. Can you tell us, when you just doing your presentation, you talked about that in your world, in your company, everything is centralized. Nothing is decentralized, nothing is open source. How do you guys see like traditional fintech companies see this space?
Can you clarify the question? What does it say?
Yeah, so like with the companies that you're, first of all, with Rapyd, but also with the people that you're interacting with and the corporations, institutions that you're interacting on the day-to-day, how did they see crypto, or do you see any change in the last year?
So regarding the crypto, we dealing less with the crypto itself, but definitely, as I mentioned in a question which was targeted to me, a stable coin, it's in our map. So we are already dealing with 2 or 3 different stable coins. So via different banks, and definitely we are planning to extend it to additional stable coins. But currently, since the traditional institutes still don't work too much with crypto, we obligated to work with something that we can translate into a dollar. Okay, at least in a bottom line, everyone wants to see a dollar at the end of the story. So stablecoins is one of the ways, and we try to work with a couple of institutes via crypto, but it's didn't success.
Yeah, but let's be more open here, right? It's like it's an open environment. Do they think that we are clowns? Do you think that we're the future? Or like, how do you really see it?
Okay, so definitely no clowns. Definitely
not anymore.
No. So before, I think, to be honest, I dealt with Bitcoin at the beginning of the Bitcoin. It was 2003 or 4, something like that.
13
and,
maybe.
Sorry?
13 maybe.
Yes. Sorry. Excuse me. So to be honest, I also had a small mining, let's say, rack. Okay, and even I mined 1 Bitcoin, I didn't realize what I did, really. So I completely lost it. Okay, it was just a stream for me. I put it in my notepad. I remember it. I put it in my notepad, and that's all. I forget about it. Okay, so in the same way, I dealt with a couple of interesting projects. But it was like a game, okay? So it's not the clowns, it's not about it.
What made the change?
But currently, the traditional institutes, they want to see a dollar, they want to see a euro, they want to see yen. But currently, we can't convince our customers, to work with Bitcoin or Ethereum, whatever. We want to see something that we can translate into money immediately. And since our customers work through banks doesn't permit them to work with, in most cases, with the crypto. So I don't have any, strong opinion about what will happen in the next year. But definitely everyone looks into a blockchain. So we had any discussion before, let's say, I think half year, something like that, about the crypto. What is the future in our opinion of the crypto, blockchain? And my opinion is that it's my own opinion. With the blockchain, it's a protocol. Okay, so as a protocol, we can use it for many cases. Currently, for example, one of the biggest issues is a KYC for a traditional business. And KYC protocol, it's not a mutual protocol between different companies. A lot of the companies deal with KYC, but there is no mutual protocol between them. So how can you solve it? You can solve it by blockchain, by transmitting data between different companies who deal with the KYC, right? If we can define in the protocol which runs on top of a blockchain. So it's one of the ideas, okay? And we see, let's say, we see companies who deal with that and they run with it, and maybe we will see new startups which come on top of this idea, okay? So this is our internal vision.
So speaking to banks, I can share something so in November during DevConnect, we had a conference there called Trustless, and I hosted a panel with Alec from Fireblocks, security researcher from the Ethereum Foundation, and 2 people from banks, one from UBS and one from ABN AMRO. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a very big bank in the Netherlands. Okay, it's gone through recording, whatever. And the topic of the conversation, and this relates to what Arkady said, related to KYC and also privacy. So privacy was a big concern for them because there's a lot of considerations for privacy. There's privacy of their transactions because banks don't want to like expose everything they're doing, because blockchain is really great about everything is exposed, but not always. You know, it's like you're exposing your order book. Banks don't like that. Also, there's the privacy of the clients, of the user, of the the people who are the users of the bank, so to speak, right? And they also should have some privacy. Now, privacy doesn't mean necessarily that nobody sees anything. It's about who can see what. And technologies, by the way, like zero knowledge allow us to be very creative there, so that's really great. And they are making strides there, and they are very much interested in going on the blockchain. They see the value. They see the value of reducing counterparty risk. Mostly, it's they don't necessarily have to trust someone. There's a lot of value around optimization. Obviously, we're now kind of replacing technology built in Fortran in the 70s with something which is completely interoperable, very fast, very nice. We're kind of bringing it, dragging, kicking and screaming into the 21st century. But it's not just the technological value. There's also actual value around the biggest, value that I see from blockchain, which is about reducing the trust. So banks can interact with each other, and they don't have that problem of like having to trust someone in the middle to make sure that everything is okay. And it's also better for the rest of humanity, so to speak. Not many people are familiar, for instance, with the Libor scandal, LIBOR, that happened, I don't know, I think like early 2000s, maybe a little earlier than that, where a lot of banks kind of colluded around this number, which basically dictates the interest level. And blockchain can prevent stuff like that. So it's protecting both the banks, it's protecting the rest of the people. There's a lot of things that can come good out of it, but like I said, there are still challenges, and I think privacy is one of the biggest ones we have to overcome and see how we can tackle that.
Okay, so Adam, next question is actually for you, because out of all the others in the audience, you pitched me, I think it was 2020, 2021, you said, stocks needs to be on chain. It's about time we will solve that. Like it's 100% that this application will come. And about a year and a half ago, it was live. And now you're here after you sold your company. So take us to that. First of all, why to sell a company in such a high growth market? Second, what's going on in the real world assets? It's like every day we're getting up in the morning and we see another $500 million of assets now on chain. And another institution is doing that. And it's like, we all know that institutions take them forever, right? Like Arkady touched that they have like, now they're thinking about things that, Ethereum solved in 2017 when it was broken.
Yeah, so I think, to echo something Steven said before, I think what we're seeing here in a way is we're seeing, let's say crypto and finance merging. That's kind of the zoom out is that, right? If you look from afar, that's what we're viewing and that's what we're witnessing. And both sides, basically, you said you have the ETPs, so like you have a lot of crypto things traded on NASDAQ and NYSE, and on the other side, we get, the traditional players interested in blockchain itself and on public chains. So that's kind of one thing that is happening, and the general kind of thing that we need to notice. On top of that, people, when I started thinking about real world assets, people used to say, okay, stablecoin works, but real world asset doesn't work, right? And I come from physics. So I study black holes. So in physics, usually the most important thing, I think in general in science, is to be able to phrase the problem correctly. So I think what helped us is that we thought that the phrasing of this problem was wrong. And we thought, okay, real world assets actually work, and stablecoins are the first real world assets. And when you think about it this way, then that's the problem becomes easy. You're asking, okay, why do stablecoins are the first instantiation of real world assets? And thus, what are the, let's say, characteristics that will bring the next asset class on chain? Okay, and I think what we saw is that stablecoins succeeded to be the first real assets on chain in volume because the underlying is very liquid, right? And because the price discovery of the underlying is trivial, right? It's just $1. Basically, when you again phrasing the question this way, what is the next asset class that is very liquid and has very good price discovery? Obviously, public equities. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing public equities going on chain, again, connecting to what was already said here, you have to understand that the infrastructure of TradFi is horrible. Like, you have no idea. It's the 80s. Okay, it's getting broken all the time, and people have to call people and sort transactions. Like people can trade on Robinhood and it looks great, but it's all fake. Like, in the end, it's a nice UI that behind it there's like tens of layers that have to solve the fact that all, let's say, payments and right, that's Rapyd, right, and other like fintech companies is basically making nice APIs and infrastructure out of the horrible kind of tech that is behind finance. And if you think and if you think that payments are bad, let me tell you about securities. Securities are horrible. Like, it's much worse. Like, you have clearing, you have T+2. It took them 40 years to go to T+1. So basically, I think what we're seeing is that tokenized equities are becoming a major theme. I personally believe that it will overtake stable coins in the next, let's say, 5 years or so. It will be kind of the main kind of catalyzation in order to really bring blockchain and finance together, or crypto and finance together. Why sell in this?
Exactly. Like, everybody here pumped, like, probably start buying X stocks and on chain. Why to sell the company?
Well, I think similar to stablecoins, it's becoming the big boys game. So if you cannot really compete, let me give you an analogy. Like, if you were a carpenter, like if you build whatever furniture, you need wood. That's your kind of raw material, right? If you're in finance, raw material is money. Okay, if you're in finance, you need money. You need working capital. There's a lot. Okay, we are a small startup. And I think what we're seeing is this kind of space is growing very rapidly, and you do need major players behind you because the costs are immense and they're going to increase. So I think basically you need to have either a sugar daddy or some way, like either partner or get acquired by a big player that can actually help you kind of scale.
Arkady, I have a quick question for you about that. Why do traditional companies are not much more active in the game of equities? How come it's like we have the same platform, the same technology that we're using, like Adam said, from the 80s, and innovation is not leaking to that? Like, we see a lot of innovation in fintech, but not really in equities.
Well, from my point of view, as I see, financial institutes are traditional financial institutes. Unfortunately, they are trying to adopt new technologies. Definitely, yes. And if you take even Israel, which is a very small country, and the financial sector, it's pretty old. And doesn't adopt a lot of new technologies, but as I see it in a banks like the Bank of Hapoalim, LOB, etc., we are definitely trying to adopt it and go with new technologies, but it goes very slow. The financial sector in Israel specific is past from work, I think, for 20 years at least. So it's very difficult to move such big ship to just to change the course of this big ship. It's taking time. Also, a lot of customers, they want to see, again, the bottom line, a dollar, a stable coin. We don't want to see something which is just, we can't touch it, we can't use it immediately. But I see in the last 10 years, I see a lot of changes. A lot of the new technologies were adopted by traditional institutes. And that go forward, and I think in the next 3-5 years, I agree that we will see change. I don't know. Currently, it's depends also on President Trump, because he's very he's very about stable coins. He owns a couple of them. So
I'll take it to another question. So, like in 2021, I think it was the first time that Rapyd was announced a unicorn.
That's right. Yes.
And I actually want to take that, consider like the next part of the chat to more of like the entrepreneurial path of each one of you. You reached to a unicorn. It's not a secret that in, I think, like March of this year, your evaluation got cut in like half. How is that affect on you as CDO, leading the company from day one? What happened during that time, that, like, reaching to the $10 billion valuation? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Let's talk about it a little bit. What has been evaluation? Evaluation is just, if I talk about analysts, okay? So we have a lot of the ships, right? Let's say it's a white ships. It's why, and one ship, okay, ship's meh, yeah.
One ship is black.
Yeah. So one black ship, yeah, says okay, this way is right, okay, and all white ships goes through this way. Unfortunately, they just fall from to I don't know from any pit and say that should say okay, it was wrong. So let's go to in our way, okay. So evaluation is just a matter of a definition. It's something that it's still wasn't approved by market. Okay, so if you go to IPO, if you go to M&A, it's something that it's make it, let's say, we see dollar.
Concrete.
Okay, currently I can create a new company. Okay, I can establish a company and say, okay, it's a $1 billion company. Okay, because it's my evaluation. I can do everything that I want, and still it's a private company, and this is just evaluate this company for these numbers. So okay.
Yes, but let's put the VCs at the side, right? Like, these guys can lose. What about your employees that you gave them ESOP based on $10 billion valuation? 2 years after, they worked hard, the ESOP worth half.
Well, it's a tricky question. It's a tricky question. Well, but it's a truth.
Most entrepreneurs face it, right? It's like not everybody goes all the way up. Most of them goes down.
You push me in the corner. Yeah, it's okay. No, it's right. So, but I'm hearing I will answer. So definitely, when you go to a startup, okay, everyone here, it's a risk. Okay, it's like just a game. It is just like a roulette. Okay, you go to Vegas, you put your money on blackjack, right? Okay, you like blackjack. Okay, so because you can win, but you can lose. It's exactly the same. So you go to a big evaluation, you sell dreams to people, but people must understand that they can lose sometimes. Everyone loses, also me.
Yeah, of course. We're all the same way, right?
It's all the people, also me. Okay,
Yeah.
So a startup, it's big risk, and everyone who can't carry this risk, he shouldn't go to the startup. If you go to startup because of technology, because idea, because you want to do something new, okay. If you go to mining, it's okay, okay. but you must understand that you can't lose. That's all.
Super honest. Appreciate it. Adam, do you want to say something?
Yeah, maybe, you know, if people here want to, let's say, you know, create or build a startup, you know, it's probably the hardest thing you can do in life. It's you know, it's not, as kind of Arkady said, most times it's not up and to the right? And most times, almost every founder that I know, even those that sold the company, had a time where they almost closed the company, fired all their employees. Like, it's very difficult, and that's the times where you're basically kind of measured and shown courage. I think in the end, I see kind of startup world is in a way like, you know, gladiators kind of arena. You need to want to be in the arena, right? And that's there is no rationale to actually go inside, to be honest, except, you know, you want to be there. So,
I just want to say that the key for success is just say truth to people. At the beginning.
Yeah.
If someone goes to startup and they see evaluation and everything, you must just put all people in a room and say, guys, this is risks. We are going to this idea. We will be there, definitely yes, but this is a risk. And you must expedite it to yourself, to your family, and to your future and to your career.
Honesty is the best policy. Tom, I want to touch you. You're going to be on the grill next. You guys sold the companies just before the bull run of 2021. I feel like about 6 months after you sold it, it was more than double worth for your buyers. Take us through that time. Like, how is it to suffer a bear market as an entrepreneur?
First of all, I want to just add a couple of stuff to the things that were said, like tips for people who are either thinking of making a startup or joining a startup. So joining a startup, I think that if you look on an average, if you're capable of joining like a really strong startup, there's also a good possibility you can join like one of the, you know, big companies, I don't know, let's say Facebook, Meta, Amazon, Google, whatever. On average, you will make more money there. If you look at the equity you will get there, you will make more money than a startup, most likely, because like 99% of startups will fail. So on average, if you take the casino example, for instance, it's always about the average, right? You will make more money. So keep that in mind. If you shouldn't go there just because of the money. It should be about what Arkady said. If you're like, you make a lot more impact in a startup, you do a lot more interesting stuff, usually, not always, but a lot of the time, and you have like more control over your destiny, so to speak. So there's that. And I would also say about like what you asked, like the tricky question about people who join and then the valuation goes down. Well, it also goes the other way. There's people who join and then it went up. You know, that's the casino life. It's like all about timing, also for the employees. So, you know, that's life. You're joining a startup, you're getting on a roller coaster. And if you're joining a startup in crypto, that's a roller coaster without the thing on top of it. And that kind of ties into what you asked me about what happened back in 2019. So yes, we started everything back in, you know, January 2018, raised capital, grew the company. Porters, for people who doesn't know, this was basically the first web-based Web3 SDK. This was, back then there was only MetaMask. This was the first solution where we said we need a better experience for users. We did end-to-end encryption, kind of like LastPass or 1Password. You encrypt everything on your client side. You have your private key, you can sign for stuff, but we never held anybody's private keys. It was all web-based. And we were basically, back in 2018, Portis was like on every application. We were on Uniswap, OpenSea. Uniswap and OpenSea weren't that big back then, but we were there. And in 2019, there was the bear market. And it was one of the hardest things I had to do is when we had to let go of most of the people. It's like, if you start a company, you become responsible for people being able to pay their bills. That's a very big responsibility that you don't have when you're an employee. And it's a very hard thing to tell people, look, we gotta shut down the lights. My co-founder, you said I was CEO, then CTO. That happened because the CTO also decided that he had enough of startups, he had enough of crypto, he was leaving. I had a lot of things going on in my life as well. My wife was pregnant with the first kid. It was like a very, very fun period, like you mentioned, like those things that you go through. And we did the classical things where we actually ended up getting acquired by Shapeshift, which was our biggest user. They had Portis integrated, and they basically wanted the technology, how we built the wallet, to release their own wallet. They ended up actually becoming a DAO later on and decentralizing, and I ended up joining Kraken. They sold Portis to Kraken, and I was also part of Kraken. But at that point, I had no, this wasn't my IP, wasn't my company. I was actually like a shapeshift worker working on Portis. So, but it was a fun experience. And then moved on later to get to the foundation. But in terms of like going through that, of being in a bear market, you have to make tough decisions because your runway becomes very, very thin. And you also have like fiduciary responsibilities and stuff. You can't like wait until the last minute because there's things to pay for if you're winding down a company. So sometimes you have to make hard decisions. To tell you that I wish we hadn't necessarily sold to Shapeshift, who knows? Like, yes, maybe. We could have, like, maybe if we could have held on through, maybe Portis could have been like what Privy is today. I see Privy as what Portis could have become in the sense of what the product is. And Privy got acquired by Stripe, and that was a big acquisition, right? So I would also say make sure your co-founder is someone that will kind of stick with you through it. Like I said, my co-founder decided he had enough of like this roller coaster, which is valid. It's not for everybody, and but it's gonna be a roller coaster. Keep that in mind. You're gonna have periods where you gotta have that conviction of sticking through it. So yeah, that's a big part of it.
So it's actually for you and Adam, talking about the other side of a roller coaster, like the company that goes uphill. Both of you got to work at Kraken, which probably the guys here does not know, but Kraken is planning to go IPO in the next, let's say, 18 months. Secondaries were super high demand, probably thanks to both hard work. What do you see unique in Kraken that is doing different today compared to other companies in the space?
I'll let Adam answer more because I think he's more has a deeper knowledge. I was there for about 8 months because I joined Kraken at a period of time where they hired like around 1,000 people within a year. They basically, every Monday, there was 50 people getting onboarded. Now, this is not sustainable as they quickly learned because they weren't hiring people one by one. They were gobbling up companies. Now you get maybe you like the founder and the other co-founder, but you're getting 500 people that might not necessarily be the right vibe for your company. And they had a big culture problem. There was a New York Times article about it. There was a big fiasco there. I won't go into details, but they ended up like firing a lot of people, right? Self-included. It was basically everyone they hired in the last year, most of them. And a couple that maybe they were just looking for the opportunity to, at the same time. Everybody was firing back then. This was back in like the boom and bust of crypto 21 on 22, end of 22, something like that. So I can't speak too much about what goes on in Kraken. I joined at a very exciting time in the company. I think Adam is there where it's a bit more kind of like in a better place, I would say, after they kind of clean brains. So I would let you speak to that.
Thanks. So I think, in general, of course, because crypto is very much kind of a bull bear kind of market, we have the cycles. So obviously everyone kind of, grows on the bull market and then, fires a lot of people on the bear market, especially exchanges where, it's pretty obvious that their business is kind of very kind of correlated with the market. On the other hand, I do think, similar to investments, right? Short term, a lot of it is noise. Long term, there is the actual value, right? I think from cycle to cycle, you see which company in the out of the leader basically makes the right decisions and bets on how the future is going to look like, right? And I think Kraken definitely, in the last cycle and the one before, are definitely kind of positioning themselves correctly with respect to what's happening and how the future will look like, and kind of integrating the right products, buying the right teams, and building the right technologies, and also penetrating the right markets, I think. Well, that's a small thing, but really, if you. Yeah,
I think we can all agree that was a mistake.
Yeah. But they were like trying to following the trends.
Of course, in some case, in a way you have to follow the trend, right? There are things you cannot resist. Coinbase made kind of base, obviously, But in general, I think that if you look at Kraken's kind of penetration along markets, into Asia, into Europe versus, let's say, Coinbase being very just US kind of concentrated, I think that's a much better strategy. So, and Kraken are investing a lot in infrastructure that I think can really scale. So yeah, I think they've done well. And in general, this, as I said, this industry is moving very rapidly, and those who can kind of predict where the ship is moving, or that's where you make the really the big money.
Awesome. Steven, going to you. I got a lot of questions.
Uh-oh.
And yeah, and then we will have a few minutes from the audience. We'll have to rush because Ali will kick us out. So you're actually the only one here at the panel that didn't have the token out there. So how is that affecting with you guys? Because when you're talking about public companies, it's pretty known fact that employees getting every morning watching how much there is of worth now. How is token effect? What are the differences? How is it affecting team building?
So we actually at Offchain Labs, I think, approach this differently than most other teams that have been associated with the token launch. For most, actually, even L2s, what happens is you launch, they launch a foundation, which launches a token, and then the labs entity kind of just becomes a service provider to the foundation, and basically, or however they structure it, but basically doesn't really have more like entrepreneurial, vision or like pursuit of venture capital or new products. Basically, it just becomes subjective only to that. But we've taken a very different approach where, when I introduce myself, I say we build Arbitrum, we build Prism. We recently acquired a company called ZeroDev. We're building smart accounts. And the way that we think about it is we have a lot to offer, right? In building Arbitrum, we've assembled, I think, the best technical team in the entire space. And while we continue to build Arbitrum and continue to contribute heavily to the technology, it would be a mistake, I think, for us to say, like, let's stop here. We have so much more that we can offer. And that's how we view ourselves. And that's why you will continue to see new products and acquisitions. We've done 2 acquisitions since, in the past 2 years. And you'll continue to see us on the new product development as well. And, as for employees, the way that we approach this, employees generally have a package that includes cash, equity, and tokens. And, to your conversation before, things move in different directions. But ultimately, we make sure that people are well compensated, well aligned. That's actually what we really want, align with the work that you're doing. And a lot of that work is actually not in the token, but in the future of Offchain Labs. And Arbitrum token in particular is kind of unique because it's really not centrally controlled by Offchain Labs at all. It's like one of the actual DAOs, and Adam knows a lot about DAOs, but one of the actual DAOs that actually exists and really has control both of the treasury, like all the fees coming from Arbitrum, and there have been tens of millions of dollars of fees just this year alone. Don't go to myself, don't go to Offchain Labs, don't go to the Arbitrum Foundation. They go to this wallet. What do you say?
Not going to Scani.
Exactly, yes. But go to this wallet on chain that's controlled. The only way to get funds out of there is a vote of the token holders. And this is something that's like very, very unique. And so it really does have a life of its own. But obviously, a lot of the work that we do contributes to the success of Arbitrum, particularly on the technology side.
Awesome. So, and you touched that you guys started quite late to the competition, and you overtake it. So what was the decision that, as an entrepreneur, as a team, that made you guys winning the competition, leading now?
So there's 2 parts that for the L2, I think we were very early actually. So we were the, if you go on YouTube and look for the first mention of Arbitrum, you'll find a fall 2014 class semester video at Princeton. Ethereum went live, by the way, 6 months later in July of 2015. So you'll like, we were very, very early, really, to the idea of building a layer 2. We didn't use that terminology then. The thing I think you're probably referencing that we were a bit late to was this idea of utilizing our technology to power other chains. This is something which we resisted for some time, and we're definitely late to the game, but have definitely today we have the most layer 2s compared to anyone else. But I think a lot of it actually is what Arkady was saying before. I'll tell you an early story for us. You know, it was around right before we launched our series, we raised our Series A, so maybe around 2020, 2021, and we were basically out of money. And we still had we knew what we were building was good, was better than anything else that was out there. We were very, very convicted, but we somehow couldn't convince, you know, all the sheep, if you know, in Arkady's example. And what you had was like rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection. And in the span of literally 2 weeks, like that, and I don't know exactly, I mean, we did some things, we had this like launch of the DeFi ecosystem, but everything shifted. And literally in a span of 2 weeks, every single fund that had rejected me 2 weeks ago at a valuation that was literally, without exaggeration, 10% of the current one was coming back and begging for like scraps of this round. And like, did we change during that time? No. But something really, really shifted. And I think the idea is that, you know, you really have to be convicted about what you're doing, convicted about what you're building, and believe that you're doing something better. Don't build a startup for the money. You probably won't get the money. Build a startup because you actually believe that you can build something in a way that nobody else can, and you have something to offer that nobody else can. If the value comes, that's fantastic. And if it doesn't, you'll still be able to get that tech job that you could have gotten, you know, a year earlier anyway. But that's the only reason to do what you're doing. We were very convicted, and it would have been a real shame had Arbitrum died back there in 2021 because we couldn't get the capital to continue. Thankfully, thank God we were able to continue. We were able to raise capital, but really, you know, in terms of the valuation, nothing really changed in those 2 weeks. It's just we were convicted, and that was during COVID, and I would spend literally 20-hour days speaking to anyone and everyone, you know, to convince them to build Arbitrum. And you know, that's something which I do today as a founder as well, to pay it forward. There are a lot of people that are helpful to me back then. You know, I love to make intros for founders and help founders always try to, you know, give their opportunity to tell their story as well.
Great. Questions, guys? Anyone want to ask something? Yes.
First of all, you talk about the successes and great lives, but what about the deadlines, failures? And the second one, any tips for fundraising?
Okay, so question, what are the failures or like some of the less shiny sides of entrepreneurship, and best tip for fundraising? Who wants to take that? Tom.
I think I spoke a little bit about my bad times, which was the bear market of 2019. And by the way, when it comes to fundraising, the greatest tip I can give you is that when you talk to investors, what you're trying to do is minimize risk for them. So you want to present a picture where it depends on your product, but basically that's what VCs and there's no VCs here, but sorry, not the host, but yeah, actually you can talk about this more than I do, but I don't know if you do, but it's about minimizing risk for you. When I'm presenting like what I have, what the product is, if you can answer the questions that he will have before he asks them, that's your best bet. Kind of like, if he's going to be, wait, what about that? And your next slide is already with that, and he knows if you thought about that, that's good for fundraising. I'll also say that don't fundraise now. This is where nobody is. Nobody fundraising in December. Everybody's on vacation. And also it's going to be, you got to prepare for fundraising because it's going to be a very short period of time. It's like 2 weeks, and it's all about creating FOMO for these guys between each other. And I'm sorry to give away the term, but it's true. It's like it's going to be a concentrated, like maximum a month, no more, between when you start and when you end. This is not something you can stretch out because you kind of want to, again, be truthful, be okay. Don't lie because words get out and you will burn yourself forever. You don't have to lie to succeed. You just have to be smart about it. That's all. So there's going to be a lot of like back and forth with different entities, and it's going to be a very stressful time. You got to really prepare for fundraising. As for the bad times, I think I shared my sob story. Maybe I'll let Alex do it.
In the past, Backed.
No, also with Backed. I think, yeah, you know, I did the Stack before Backed, which was not a great success, and I think too early to the game. That's one of the things. But I think I've said it. This is kind of the hardest thing that I've done in life, and I've done a few things. I've done like double bachelor's, Ph.D. I have twins, so I've done some things. And that's by far the hardest. Like being an entrepreneur is kind of the hardest thing you can do. and just prepare yourself that it's going to be, again, what you said about the shiny moments, that's like very, very small portion of the time, right? Most time it's very difficult. And all the responsibility is on you. You have the employees, you have the investors, you have kind of your own story, you know, the family, the friends that are all kind of seeing you as kind of this golden boy. So you need to be prepared and mentally prepared that most chances this is not going to succeed. Okay, that's important. With respect to fundraising, you know, there is a kind of חוק המספרים הגדולים, kind of the rule of big numbers, like be prepared to get a lot of no's, and like you need to be aware of that. But you know, in the end there are many VCs, and you only need a few in order to fundraise, and most of them will going to tell you no anyway, and it's fine. You need to be convicted. With what you're like, the conviction needs to be very high with you. Again, both for VCs, and they see that, and for the bad times. That's very important.
I also going to add something to that in regards to fundraising, and you know, it's always a tricky question, right? Because it's a spectrum of opportunities, it's a spectrum of risk. But if you want to de-risk something, build your relationships with people, and that's the most important part. When someone knocks on your door and comes to ask for money, like a real stake of money, and not just stake of money, it's also join my board. I'm going to call you. We're going to talk almost every week or every few days. You guys going to help me to. You guys going to vouch for me around your community, around your colleagues. Make sure that these people know you, because they're not just going to give you money unless they know you. If they know you, yeah, they might will try to shove the money into your hand and say like, I understand it's going to happen. And that's why we sometimes see these uncapped safe and like these different type of agreements. It's like investors are willing to put their bet on someone. Why? Because they can trust. They know that they're coming from the right purpose. The last thing that investor wants to hear is that the founder took the money and did a big party around to celebrate something. And it's pretty common in crypto. If you guys ever been around the crypto community and crypto parties, you're probably not going to see many of MASTERKEY's portfolio. Why? Because the guys are just not doing it.
To add one thing about like investors generally, the way I think about it, I think one of the secrets to our success, and if you compare us to some of our competitors, quite a differentiator is we like investors. Investors are sometimes helpful. By the way, you never know which ones will be helpful and which ones won't. Like literally, like the investors that I thought would be the most helpful, like are not helpful. The investors that like I gave an allocation to as like a last thought gesture or some turn out to be the most helpful. You really, really will never know. I mean, you talk to people, try to find out, but really it's often a big surprise. But I think a very Jewish concept, so appropriate over here, is like this idea of like, ein lanu ami lehishain, right? We really need to build our own destiny. And that's true as obviously us as a people, but also true for us as a company. I don't ever do something that relies on my investor. I don't ever build a piece of technology that even relies on an external party, right? We build everything in-house. We are the only L2 that runs our own RPCs and runs all of our own nodes, and we do everything. I mean, obviously, sometimes you have to, you figure out what the point is of things that are trivial, but the idea is anything critical to your business, don't be in a position where you're only going to succeed if this investor introduces you to someone. You actually have to make sure you build that capacity in-house. And everything you get from an investor, and you should hold them to it and try to get as much as you can. That's like icing on the cake. But really, I think that's at least for me, like the best way to view investors, and it leads to less disappointment because you don't expect them to make you successful, and they won't. They have a lot of other companies, and when you're doing well, that's the irony of it. When you really don't need their help, they'll help you more. And when you really, really need their help, they kind of wrote you off already. And every company, by the way, will go through every part of this cycle because, like we said, we only like to talk about the good times. But reality, like that time where we almost like literally died as a company, I always like to say, if you're the difference between like a founder and like your like friend that went to Google or Facebook, like everyone has a little pendulum of like, the good to the bad, right? So you have your bad days and your good days. If you're at a tech company, like pendulum doesn't swing very far. Like, okay, the lunch wasn't so good. Okay, it was a little better today. But like as a founder, you have these like massive swings. You can go from like, oh my God, we are dying as a company. We're done. Our competitor just raised a huge round. They just got this massive deal. We're finished. To the next like 5 minutes, oh wow, we just won the biggest thing ever. We are winning. We got this. Let's go. And you just have to be able to deal with that. You know, those who saw me before I launched the company, I have a little less gray hair than I do today. So, you know, there's some toll that it takes in you as well. But you have to be ready for that, those huge pendulum swings as a company as well.
Alrighty. Sorry, guys. We have to end. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you guys for opening your heart and sharing with us your knowledge and experience. Sorry if I grilled you. You are the real builders. You are the innovators who are leading the space forward. And I really, really appreciate you for coming here, having this conversation with us. And thank you. And for the rest of you guys, the Web3 builders, community will continue the next events in January. Please don't forget to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever it is. We're everywhere and looking forward to see you in our next events. Cheers.
How you been? Everything good? Oh, now it's